that's where this
upload.
software here coming
Okay.
across this was one of the most exciting things as an advocate for the industry, and having the family history that I do of seeing my dad my dad just got killed out there because he was trying to work off of spreadsheets. Now that was back before all these apps and things got so fancy. But, if you don't know your numbers, or you think you know your numbers, but you're working off of antiquated information, or you don't have a way to have better updates, you're just shooting yourself in the foot chasing the dollar, and you can never catch the dang thing. At least with this, it gives you a chance. It turns the tables. And when we turn the tables and we have the data working for us because of what Scott's created at Lane Metrics, I mean, this is working off of PC Miller data. That's the most empirical information you can pretty much get when it comes to freight. So now we've got the tools, just like they've got the tools sitting in their offices to defeat us. Now we've got a fighting chance. And the best part about it, Scott, that I there we go.
All right, can you hear me now? I'm having technical difficulties here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Having some technical difficulties. Jesus. And I was trying to do an intro before we started, but
We're not live
that didn't
yet,
work
so just
like I
call me
planned.
out.
We are live now. What are you talking about? Trying to get the recording on.
She's over here giving me the Eve why.
Recording in progress. Oh, okay. We're recording. All right. So tonight we got James Lamb. Pink Cheetah is supposed to come in as well, but she couldn't guarantee it because she does have some home issues, but she said she was going to try. And James is the president of Sbtc. We're going to talk about their accomplishments, what they're doing for the trucking industry, and let's welcome them in. Let's bring them in.
Hey, well, good evening, Chris, and all our fellow trucker advocates that are out there, all you drivers that are listening in. Great to be with you this evening to chat about some of the things that we're working on, I should say, and we all need to be talking about. So where should we start, Chris?
Wherever you like. I mean, what has been your accomplishments throughout the years that you've had SBTC? Why not start with when you started SBTC and why you started it?
Well, we started SBTC back in 2014, and at the time, I was operating a group called the Association of Independent Property Brokers and Agents. Now, don't get mad at me that I was on the broker side, right? That's where we started. We started though because unlike a lot of other trade associations, from the onset, we always thought of this in terms of not, what folks at, like, let's say OIDA, say, where it's, truckers versus the world, right? Or TIA, it's brokers against the world. We kind of looked at this, as a matter of, it's really about small businesses versus big business. And so at the time, that I started my first trade association, AIPBA, it was when small brokers were clearly under attack by big brokers. And it was so obvious. There was a guy out there, you may remember, Brad Jacobs from XPO Logistics. And I mean, he pretty much, said it straight out right. He said, listen, we're going to consolidate the brokerage industry. And TIA and Bob Voltman at the time, were acting to raise the broker bond at the time. And a lot of truckers said, yeah, well, that's good. We need to raise the broker bond. But what they didn't understand at the time, and some still, may not thoroughly understand, was that was an attempt for big brokers to squeeze out their little broker competition. And by the way, a lot of I'm a former permit guy, and I helped a lot of truckers get into business, getting their authority, and I even helped a lot of brokers, small brokers start up. And when we had the Great Recession way back in 2008, a lot of the people that I had put into business as carriers, they came to me and they said, we're having a tough time, James. I don't know what we're going to do. How are we going to survive? And I said, well, one of the things you can do is get a broker license. And they said, what are you talking about? Broker? I don't like brokers. I don't even, sometimes I deal with brokers, but, we hate brokers. And I said, but the idea is to get a broker license, not so you can be a broker, but so that you can broker loads to yourself. So in other words, you'd wear two hats, and instead of getting your loads from brokers and losing money, to whatever their commission or margin, is at that point, I said, why don't you wear both hats? You present yourself as the broker to the shipper, and then you turn around and you broker it to yourself. And so a lot of guys went and did that. A lot of guys became brokers secondary to being essentially independent, one-man, mom and pop, owner-operators, independent truckers. And so, I saw that we had helped a lot of people get those licenses for that purpose. And of course, we helped a lot of people get their operating authority and break away from, big carriers represented by ATA, one of your favorites, Chris. I know that. And, we basically said, well, big brokers are attacking little brokers. And the bottom line is, if you put the little brokers out of business, what's left at that point? And the answer obviously was less alternatives, opportunities, and choice. Basically, you get a big, broker, Brad Jacobs style oligopoly controlling, brokerage. So it started off as that, and we were somewhat successful from our perspective, and in not putting so many people out of business. They did put like 9,800 brokers out of business, which was like 40% of the industry at the time. But that bounced back, and that recovered, and the bond market all came back. But basically, what we did is we said, okay, in 2014, we said, you know what? We said, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to open up a new trade association. And basically, we're going to take all those small business brokers and we're going to invite them in. And then we're going to expand or widen the net, as I like to say. And we're going to invite owner-operators in, independent owner-operators, company drivers, truckers. And so we started to go down that path, and we said, we're going to have an organization that is not trucker versus broker. It's about partnerships among all the small players in the industry. And so we said, small truckers, small brokers, small shippers, anybody who's in business at a small level, you need a place that you can go to and you can, operate and do business with integrity and ultimately, work in partnership, but not get exploited as a small business cohort by big business. So we're going to represent all the small players and, attempt to prevent, bad things from coming down the pike, whether it's laws, new laws or regulations that affect small businesses in general. And of course, there's always challenges when you try to do something like that, because sometimes, you look at a policy issue and you say, well, the brokers are going to like this, the small brokers are going to like this, but the small truckers are not going to like it, and vice versa. And so, it was very challenging to try to create a group like that from the onset. We are now at 21,000 dues paying members. And so I guess we did it. And we convinced the industry that, this is really about articulating the interests and promoting and protecting, the concerns and interests of small businesses outright. So, that's kind of how we started. We grabbed the brand truckers.com somewhere along the way as well and added that to our, entourage of brands. Trucker Lives Matter is our, campaign with respect to, gun rights for truckers. And we think that truckers should have the right to defend themselves. That came out right around 2014 when one of the drivers that we all know now, Michael Beglin, was murdered in a abandoned gas station.
Sorry.
He couldn't find safe truck parking, right? Just like Jason Rivenberg and all. And so, we've had a number of different brands along the way. And up until, maybe about a year ago, if you asked me that question, what are your accomplishments? What have you gotten done? I would probably be focused on things like, well, we're building an association, since 2014, and we're not your grandpa's trade group, and we're zealously fighting. But other than trying to do things, we didn't have a heck of a lot to list on the list. Today we do. Today we have a lot of things to list, and I'm going to list them for you. And if you go into some of the trucking media publications like The Trucker, you'll see that as of at the end of the last administration, when Secretary Pete was around November or December of 2024, we point blank said, listen, speed limiters, you can't do it. It's illegal. And, we're going to sue you if you try to do it. And here's why. Congress took back, the authority for Congress to regulate, speed, and they gave it back to the states. And so we have a clear-cut legal case against you, Secretary Pete, and, please don't make us have to sue you, but we will if we have to. Trucker picked up the story, and ultimately, the minute that Trump was back and Secretary Duffy's in place, first thing they do, they kill speed limiter. And we'd like to think that we had a significant role in making that case. Other groups did too. You can't discount a lot of the things that OIDA does, and some of these other groups as well. But we actually went full force, and we said we are going to sue you, and that worked. And then a couple of weeks later, we resuscitated the issue of English language proficiency. Now, that is clearly the issue of the year for last year, right? For 2025, Overdrive, I think in 2024 said freight broker transparency, was the issue of the year for that year. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But for 2025, it was clearly English language proficiency, non-domicile, and ultimately the states giving out CDLs to illegal immigrants who have no business having a CDL, right? So that issue we took on, but we were working on that issue during the Biden administration way back in 2022 when we first started that. And man, we went after FMCSA, and we went after, Secretary Pete, and we brought up the old 2002 Inspector General report that said that the states should be made to test the CDL applicants by FMCSA as a matter of policy and regulation for English language proficiency. So at 2022 mark, it had already been 20 years, and they never did it. And they did it a little bit with respect to skills testing, right? But not knowledge testing. And so we picked up that torch back then. No one would listen to us. We put in a request for an advisory opinion. We put in a exemption application. We did a petition for rulemaking. Everything that we did, FMCSA shot us down. We went to the Inspector General themselves, and we said, you guys said this, and we're asking you 20 years later to enforce your own audit report. right? CDL standards audit report, May of 2002. And they said, nope, we're not gonna do it. And then we put in a Freedom of Information request, and it turned out they were lying. They weren't not going to do it. They weren't going to do it that week, that year. But somebody leaked something to us that they weren't supposed to leak, and they said they were going to put it on the 5-year plan. Now, we didn't like that, but at least that's different from there's no basis to your complaint, and we're not going to do anything, right? And so, lo and behold, last year, guess what? Inspector General is auditing FMCSA on that very issue. And in the meantime, so many other things have happened. We wrote Connor's Law. We sent it to every member of Congress, and Congressman Dave Taylor, right out of Ohio, he called us. He said, "You still looking for a sponsor?" And we said, "Yes, sir, we are." And we sent it over to him, and he picked it up. And he revised it a little bit, and he sent it to Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, T&I, and ultimately they came up with a final draft, and that was one of two proposals we had sent to him, and it was zeroed in on if you catch someone after the fact, after they've gotten their CDL on the road, who does not speak English, you got to put them out of service. And by then, we had found out about the Obama-era MC memo, right, from 2016, where they said stand down on putting people out of service. That's insane. You stop a guy, he doesn't speak English, it's in violation of 391.11 of the federal regulations. Give him a ticket and just send him on his way, the Obama administration told FMCSA to do. And that's what they did. Until we brought up that memo to Secretary Duffy and Larry Minor at FMCSA at the time. We said, "You guys still following this? Like, this is from 2016. It's almost, at the time, almost 10 years. And we said, surely that can't still be your policy." Lo and behold, Secretary goes to the president. The president issues his own executive order, and he directs Secretary Duffy to get rid of that memo. And they reversed it. And then you see our bill get sponsored and introduced in the House, Connor's Law. And even though it doesn't include the first part about, making the states test for English, we kept pushing. And lo and behold, another bill pops up. And then it covers that particular issue in the Senate, and Dave Taylor picks it up in the House. So we got both parts of Connor's Law that we wanted, just under different bill names. And now there's so many sponsors in the House, the sponsors, of Connor's Law in the Senate. And the breaking news as of a month or so ago is that Dave Taylor got it attached, Connor's Law, to Delilah's Law, and that's the big one, right? Since the State of the Union address, the president calling for that, right? Targeting illegal immigrants, they're getting these CDLs. And now it's one big, beautiful Connor's Law package, as the president, I guess, would say, and we have a picture on our social media. I don't know who wrote the pic, who created the picture. They contacted me at one point, but what a beautiful piece of work. It's a picture of a young man and a young girl holding hands. It's Connor and it's Delilah, and they're holding hands as they're walking towards the Capitol, because now it's one law. Now it's one bill, and it's passed the House, and it's now on its way to the House floor. As soon as they figure what they're doing with Iran, I guess, then it'll come to a House vote, and then it goes to the Senate. And hopefully, it will go to the president, and it will become law. And all aspects of our original draft then will become law. So, we're very excited about that. We think that's an accomplishment. And I'll tell you, Chris, I've written as a trade group executive going back 16 years now with 2 different trade associations. I've written something like a dozen bills. None of them have ever gotten introduced, let alone passed through committee. 97% or something crazy like that of the bills that get introduced never make it out of committee. They die in committee, right? You all remember the I'm just a bill, right? For those of you who are my age, right? From Schoolhouse Rock, right? That's kind of the whole thing. You might get lucky enough to get it introduced, but it takes an act of Congress, right, to make a bill into a law. He signed your bill, right? So to be able to get this far on this one bill is an accomplishment to us, because it takes a lot to just even get one member of Congress to pick up your proposal and make it a bill. So we're excited about that. On the freight broker transparency fight, we started that back when May Day was going on back in 2020, when people were outside the White House and they were screaming at the president, and rates were like 54 cents a mile for an independent trucker and a carrier. That's how bad it was. COVID had hit, but then we figured out what was going on, that there was some price gouging going on and price fixing and all sorts of stuff by what I call the cartel. And so we took the matter to the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. The president then wound up, with the help of a lot of trucker advocates that were on the scene that day, who got the president's attention, and they got Meadows' attention and Bill Barr and all, and I got interviewed, by the Department of Justice attorneys and special agents, in reference to antitrust on brokers. And I don't know what's going on with that. It's still in progress, because those guys never tell you. Those investigations can take, many, many, many years. But I can tell you that, everything from that point forward started to change in our favor. And after we asked for strengthening of broker transparency, so that these waivers that these big brokers put in their contracts to make you, to deny you your transparency rights, after we asked for strengthened transparency, a little less than 2 weeks later, OIDA did the same thing. And, maybe they were going to do it anyway. Maybe they copied us. They added some extra stuff in there that we now, agree with. So regardless of, whose idea it was and all that, there's two trade associations that have been fighting for 6 years to make big brokers, and all brokers for that matter, accountable and ultimately to be transparent and not be able to waive or coerce you to waive your rights as a condition to do business and get loads, because that, in our opinion, is a violation of the law called evasion of regulation. And it also, we believe, violates antitrust law in terms of what's called unreasonable restraint of trade. So we made those arguments. And finally, after 3 years in 2023, FMCSA said, yep, we're going to approve SBTC's petition for strengthening transparency. Yep, we're going to approve OIDA's. We're going to combine them into one docket since they're the same issue. And then they got another one from TIA, right, on behalf of brokers, and TIA had argued, let's just repeal the thing outright and get rid of transparency. And FMCSA said no, we're not going to do that. We're moving forward with strengthening transparency. We're not going to dump it after 75 years of conventional ICC, FMCSA wisdom. So that's a victory, right? We beat them on that, and we got our rulemaking approved. Took them, unfortunately, another year and a half before they actually started that process in November of 2024, and they put out something, didn't do what we and OIDA asked, which was namely target the waivers of the 371.3 rights. They came up with something else, and they said, well, instead of it being a right, we're going to call it a duty of a broker to give transparency. But there really wasn't much teeth there. We did a big campaign, for people to write in and comment. 7,000 people wrote in. There were so many people at the end of the comment period writing in still that at the recommendation of, I believe it was Mike Boston from NOAA, he said, James, why don't you ask them to extend the comment period? And I said, Mike, that's a great idea. I think we're going to do that. And we did, and they approved it, and more comments came in. And then something weird happened. And that is, as we were winning, TIA, who was losing, goes to the Small Business Administration and makes an argument at their roundtable discussion that brokers, specifically small business brokers that they purportedly represent, these are the guys that represent TQL and, C.H. Robinson, multi-billion-dollar brokers. But no, they told SBA, we represent the small brokers, and small brokers don't want this. It's not fair for the small brokers. That wasn't the case. You know who the small brokers are with? Sbtc. You know how I know? Because I used to be the president of the Small Brokers Association, AIPBA. So it was all nonsense. And so somehow they convinced the Office of Advocacy at SBA to ask the secretary to do a do-over on the rulemaking. Stop what you're doing. Redo it. And let's do something called negotiated rulemaking, where everybody sits down at a table and they have coffee, and rather than it be a one-sided thing like what we had going in that rulemaking, at least to a certain degree, and hopefully we were going to get more as a result of the comments. They said, no, you guys should both sit down, TIA and SBTC and OIDA, negotiate, you compromise, you come up with something, you can all live with. No, we wanted transparency, and they didn't, and there was no compromise. But something happened. They stopped the rulemaking, and they announced they're going to do a new one. And they said that new one is going to happen in May of 2026. And I had a conversation with FMCSA Administrator Derek Bars not too long ago, a few days back. And I said, Mr. Bars, got a lot of people who are saying it's May. They've been waiting for 6 years, sir, about transparency and rulemaking. And we were almost there, and then it got scrapped. And now you're supposed to be, according to the unified agenda, you're supposed to be doing it in May. Mr. Bars, please tell me you're gonna do it in May, so I can go back to them and tell them all. And he said, yes, James, we are. Now, what's the nature of this? I have no idea. It's as good of a guess. Your guess is as good of a guess as mine. But what I do know is that in September, when it was, Truck Driver Appreciation Week, Secretary Duffy was out in the field, and this is on Twitter, and it's on our Twitter as a repost a couple of days ago at the SBTC. And you know what he posted? A video of him talking to this trucker, and he says to the trucker, what's the big issues? And the trucker says, you know what the biggest issue is, Mr. Secretary? It's broker transparency. It's what we really need you to address. We really need help with this, and we need you to be on our side. And you know what the secretary said? He said, USDOT is absolutely going to make brokers be upfront with independent truckers and carriers. So that tweet alone, we're reminding him that he said this because a lot of things can happen in the bureaucracy. He's running the show. Bars is running the show. We told them both. I even emailed them a couple of days ago. Don't forget you said this, because the truckers have not forgotten. Please, when this comes out, this needs to not be a watered down version. It needs to not be compromised. It needs to be better than it was in November of 2024. Please make this be what we've all been waiting for, and that is actual broker transparency, strengthening of the rule. And they also know that about a month ago, we sent out a letter again to every single member of Congress, and we presented our new bill for broker transparency just as a failsafe in case this doesn't go well at FMCSA. We're saying maybe this really should be above their head and it should go to Congress directly. And so the Transportation Intermediaries Accountability Act of 2026 is out there for you to download. And by the way, the acronym for that bill is the TIA, which is not anything TIA, the trade association, is going to like, right? So that's kind of a tongue in cheek. You know, I got to have some fun in this whole thing. So I called it the TIA Act against TIA, right? And so you can download that from Freight Broker Transparency Now.com. Freight Broker Transparency Now.com. It goes right to a PDF, and you can see the letter to Congress. You can read the full bill, and that bill is going to do so many things if we can get that one introduced. And remember, you know, I'm kind of 1 for 12 so far, so my odds are not that good right now. So we really need help from everybody that's out there to push this bill. What this bill does is a whole bunch of things. First of all, it takes the broker transparency rule and it makes it a law. It actually makes it a law that no one can waive, no one can give exemptions, from. It's an actual law from Congress, and it has a built-in, if you don't get transparency clause in there, you have a right as a trucker or a motor carrier to a private right of action. And if Dakota comes in and she starts to talk about how, she pursued a private right of action with respect to a complaint under a different statute against TQL on broker transparency, it's the same kind of thing, except it's intended to be direct about broker transparency. You don't have to go look and find this, this statute somewhere that's hidden in 49, Title 49. This one's going to be right there for you to see. And you can then sue if you don't get transparency under that private right of action. It takes the broker bond. Now, remember, I'm the guy who used to say, we wanted to keep the bond low and reasonable, maybe raise it a little bit for inflation, but not too high, so that you put all the small brokers out of business, and then the truckers have to go to TQL because they don't have Joe's brokerage to go to anymore, right? So we started with that, but we're not on that path anymore. You know what we're actually talking about doing? We're talking about leave the bond the way it is for new companies that start up. We'll leave it at 75,000. So many years have gone by that inflation as it is, it probably should be 75,000 under our old theory, right? So leave it at 75,000. But you know what we need to do? We need to tie the bond to the revenues of the broker that we're dealing with. Why should you, Chris? I can't remember if you were the guy who had the brokerage, or if it was Mike Johnson, or one of you guys recently. Was you, right? So you go, right? You get a broker license and bond, and you got to be bonded at 75,000. You've got to be brokered or bonded at the same level as $9 billion a year TQL. Are you kidding me? How does that protect carriers' money, right? So we're saying it should be slated, and it should be based on your revenues. Now, brokers are not going to like that, because then they got to tell people how much they're making, right? And boy, how much they're making, is that an issue? And don't get me started on Ken Adamo, because you guys, what's going on this week, regarding that guy and DAT and his alleged 12% broker margins, when Pink Cheetah says she got a document that says TQL kept 40%, right? So, there's a whole bunch of things that are built in. Sorry?
46%.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when we did the math after we got the documents from FMCSA on a FOIA, I think I think the figure was 44 from what I remember, and I think it had to do with there was a lumper involved. I don't know, but it's at least over 40%. We'll say it's 40% or more. And so that's not 12%, Mr. Adamo, and that's not 16%, Mr. Voltman from 2020. So what this bill does is it requires the broker to disclose his commission to his shipper client up front, and has to be agreed upon and declared, and can't be changed along the way, and there's no more double dipping where the broker negotiates with the shipper and gets a certain amount out of them, and then a certain amount out of the carrier. If their commission is 14%, that's all they're entitled to. And anything else that they collect that they don't give over to the truck beyond that 14%, they're stealing, and it's fraud. And we wouldn't want fraud, right, TIA? So hopefully, maybe TIA will, take a look at this. I don't know. But, that's basically what, this is all about. And what we're trying to do there is we're trying to say, look, what's going on in the brokerage industry is that brokers are not really brokers, because what they're doing is they're buying and selling freight. They're flipping freight. You know what freight brokers are like? Real estate investors. The guys that go and buy a house low and they fix it up a little bit. Yeah, and then they flip it. They sell it high, right? That's what they're doing. It's called arbitrage. And in this instance, it's service arbitrage. And so, we're saying that in this bill and in this letter to Congress. And, we're basically saying, that's got to stop, because every other broker in America, whether you're a real estate broker or stock broker or an insurance broker, your client knows how much your service costs from the onset, and they agree to it. It's not this, finagling, and you get whatever you wind up getting from buying and selling. They got to make a decision here. Either we keep calling these people brokers and we hold them accountable to being actual full-fledged brokers that charge their client a commission, or we say they're not brokers, in which case open the market to everybody. You don't need a license and bond at all, and it's buyer beware. And in that case, it's open to any investor who wants to buy and sell freight. But we don't want that, because we want carriers' money to be protected. We want the licensing and bonding scheme in place. We just want freight brokers to act and behave like every other type of broker, third-party intermediary in the country. And one more thing that I'll leave you with, and then I'll be happy to chat about any of this stuff and answer any questions anybody has. But the current situation legally is that many of you know that we are suing the FMCSA over privacy rights for truckers in terms of release of your personally identifiable information, your social security numbers, to a best thing I can do is call it an enterprise, because we're headed down the RICO track, and that phrase keeps coming up. The Unified Carrier Registration Plan. And that board is supposed to be, under the law, the UCR Act, a part of the US DOT. It's in 49 USC 13908. And so we filed a lawsuit because they're letting these guys run rampant and rogue, and they're making you pay for their legal expenses. They're raising your fee for 2027 so they can have another $250,000 in legal defense slush fund money. And you know what? They need the money because they keep getting themselves in legal trouble, and they need to defend themselves. They keep doing violations of law, like the Sunshine Act, where they didn't follow the open meetings law, and the judge slapped them for that. And they've gone and tried to take, through personal vendettas, people's domains away that they've had for like 15 years. And, they take it away through what's called a UDRP ICANN proceeding. And they claim that their trademark, is the reason for it. Their trademark is illegal because the law says they were supposed to be made legal by a regulation, and that never happened. And so the whole trademark is illegal. And so they keep spending this money on these frivolous legal battles as they're trying to hurt people that are trying to serve small truckers who don't have in-house compliance departments. And ultimately, in that one case, they lost. The company, the permitting service, got to keep their domain, and they were slapped upside the head, and it was called a bad faith complaint, and it was in abuse of the administrative proceeding. And then they had to pay the permitting service for their legal expenses to go through all this nonsense. And guess who's paying for that? If they have their way, it's you. So we recently went and looked at the rulemaking docket. Not a heck of a lot of comments protesting this 20% fee hike that they're trying to do for 2027 on all you guys. After 25% the last time in 2024 for the last 2 years. And we then realized that they didn't give you on the docket the actual fee calculation document from the UCR Board of Directors. They said it would be in there, wasn't attached. So we went to FMCSA and we said, no. That's a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. That's a violation of the Fifth Amendment, due process. And so you got to start the clock again and post the document. And you know what they did? They did just that. And in the meantime, we went back to court and we said, the court should stay this fee hike until this legal battle is over, where the very essence of the legality of this UCR plan is decided. And so there's a motion pending for that. And we're hoping that the court will agree with us that the current fee structure has to stay status quo, and they can't be raising your fees to cover for the board's legal expenses for all the shenanigans that they've been doing. And ultimately that's on them, and that's their problem. So that's kind of, where we are in a nutshell. There's other issues that we work on from time to time, but that's kind of our main set of activities and accomplishments. And I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Yeah, it does. And I wanted to bring something up. So what I meant by accomplishments, just because bills aren't getting passed or anything, you're actually doing something. Sbtc is actually doing something. And that's what I'm not actually talking about, because a lot of these organizations, advocates, they're saying that they're doing something when they're really not.
Yeah.
You're the vice versa of that. And that's exactly what I'm even forming with Ignacio, Mike, Jane, and quite a few others. Best of One, Truckers for Truckers magazine. We're building something on the background to help you guys and the other associations that are actually doing something, because I've even seen movement from TMJ, Billy Randall. They actually, how do I put it? They show action behind their words. They put the footwork in. They put the action into the words. And with what we're building, it's going to help you guys push that even farther. That's all I could say right now on what I'm doing right now. You kind of know what I'm talking about, James. We've talked in the background.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, Chris. And what's really good to see right now is that there's a lot of people that are coming together, and without having these issues addressed across the board by trade associations and by groups on, let's just say, Facebook, right? Maybe they're not formal, entities, and they're not formal, but there's advocacy groups that are on Facebook, and then there's individual trucker advocates, like all these people that now we've come to become familiar with, on We the Truckers, and I got to tell you that the momentum is building, and the more people join up with this coalition, the better it is, because not one group, whether you're a trade association like Sbtc or a little bigger, than us, the mother of all trade associations for truckers, OIDA, whether you like them or don't like them, or like us or don't like us, whatever, not one group can do this. And the fact that that FMCSA put this broker transparency petition under one docket, as much as historically SBTC has not been very fond of, OIDA, and I'm sure they feel the same way, they kind of put us in the sandbox together, and they forced us to fight together for you. And the next thing that comes after that is all these other groups that have come, on board along the way. This is a 6-year fight, for this. And I've been talking about freight broker transparency since, my permitting days. That goes back to 2006, 2007. So this is a 20-year fight for me. And this fight has been so zealous that many of you know that I had a political hit job against me, just as I announced 10 years ago that I was going to pick up the torch that OIDA dropped and made a deal with TIA, and I picked it up.
James, why don't we put a pin into that, because we've only got about 15, 20 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
For the live.
All right.
We'll have you back on, and we'll go over
we can talk about that in more discussion, but that's fine. So I'll yield my time to whoever is left.
Right. And one other thing that I was going to bring up is, just because you got 21,000 due paying members doesn't mean you still don't have more that actually support you.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have followers. We have at least 150 more followers on social media.
Exactly
120 in one group alone on LinkedIn. So absolutely.
And Mike's actually got a question for you. Go ahead, Mike.
The one thing that I'd like to see about broker transparency, and I want your thoughts on it, is, okay, the broker gets a load from the shipper. The contract says X amount of dollars a mile, X amount of cents fuel surcharge, X amount of dollars for stop pay, or TARP pay, whatever the extras are. Now, the brokers combined all of this into one ball, and they take their percentage off the top.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that it needs to be changed to where the broker can only have the shipping fee, none of the fuel surcharge, because they're not buying fuel for a truck. And 2, they're not the one out there doing the labor, fighting traffic for 3, 4, 5 stops, or 110-degree weather out there slinging tarps over a load. And I've had a lot of brokers kick back and, that's part of my money. No, it ain't your money. So, I mean, if all that stuff listed out on the broker transparency and the broker's still taking some of that, how is that going to affect everything with your bill that you guys have out?
Well, regardless of whether it's strengthening transaction or transparency as a matter of regulation or the new law, what's important is that what you're talking about is access to these documents. Now, the issue is access when? Access before or access after? And we all know there's a guy that's out there that, says transparency should be before, and that's a topic of another show, I guess. But the problem is that what most brokers do is they throw that figure at you, and you say, "What about fuel surcharge?" And they pull that old Prego ragu commercial, right? It's in there, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
So you should have a right at some point to know whether or not it was in there, and whether or not that there was something separate that you should have gotten the whole thing for. And what we have, the best thing I can say in the limited amount of time that we have, is that from our perspective, the phrase we use is broker transparency is not about what you made on your last load. It's about what you're going to make on your next load. because once you have the documents from a broker and you see what they did to you, then that's when you get to police what happens next. You get to either negotiate better and say, no, 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 fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, not gonna happen, pal. You get to have that negotiating power, and you also have the power to just walk away from that broker and never talk to them again, and tell the story to the next broker and say, I'm
Okay,
going to do a
so
load with you and we're going to go through this. And I hope to God that I don't find out the same about you that I just found out about broker X.
right. So basically, what you're saying is keep it the way it is, and then after the deal, you get the transparency thing, and then if you get a load from them again, you can use that against them on their next load. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm basically saying is that the transparency has to kick in after you have been made a party to the load.
Right.
And that doesn't happen until, the rate con is out there, the contract's in place, and you're bound. And then you have rights. Otherwise, these wet dreams that are out there that, shippers are gonna, waive their rights to confidentiality and not hold the broker accountable to confidentiality and just start telling everybody that the broker makes an offer to all their information. That's just never going to happen. TIA is never going to let that happen.
Right.
FMCSA is not going to do it, and Congress is not.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I got one more question for you now. Let somebody else have it.
Yeah.
Hang on. I forgot what the heck I was going to say now.
That's all right. There's a lot of things we're throwing out at you. No worries.
I can't think of it. Let somebody else go. I'll think of it in a minute.
Fair enough, sir.
Nice meeting you, James.
Yeah. Finally, right?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Here's Jane.
Oh, hi, Jane.
She was telling me, no. You needed to see her.
Okay.
Oh, I know what it was. What about these clauses that these brokers are throwing in there that aren't allowed? Is that something that's in there in bold letters saying that they're going to, if they can't do it, there's going to be fines or something like that? Or how is that going to be handled?
Yeah, that's in the bill that we hope becomes law, and it specifically declares those waivers as being evasion of regulation. It specifically has that language in there, and it says those are disallowed by future law, and you can't do that because it's multiple things. It's not only coercion, in terms of withholding the loads and retaliation and evasion of regulation, but it's unreasonable restraint to trade. So it's all in the bill, just like Ragu and Prego would say. Right?
Okay.
Fair enough.
All righty. Well, I appreciate your answers, James. Thank you so much, and I think you had my answers, so we're good.
Yeah, and we are fighting that issue still in the rulemaking. So when the time comes and they open up the rule sometime the comment period sometime this month, we're going to invite you and all drivers to say, look, the whole point of this was to stop those waivers. That's what SBTC first said, May 6th of 2020. 2 weeks later, OIDA said it. It's been 6, years. You tried to do some, nonsense rule that didn't address it. This time you got to address it. That's what we all have to say. Yes.
Well, when you find out when that is,
smoking mirror.
Send us the information, and we'll attach it to our website, WeTheTruckers.com, and we'll also we'll put up some posts on our Facebook, our TikTok, our Instagram, and all them other places, and we'll help you get that word out for where they need to go to leave comments and everything when they open up the comment section. That's something that we're going to have to get the word out really, really good on.
Thank you. I don't know what state you're in, but you're going to hear me screaming from the top of my lungs from Florida when that happens. So don't worry. You'll get
hearing you live in Florida.
I am.
I've been hearing you shout for over 3 years now, James.
You've been hearing what? What was that, Chris?
I've been hearing you shout for over 3 years now. So
Oh yeah.
exactly
yeah.
why I follow you and support you.
Thank you,
But
sir.
Mike, I kept muting your mic because you're getting feedback coming through your mic.
I wonder what from. There ain't nothing on in here.
I don't know. But that's what all that static and everything was earlier. But you got anything, Ignacio, before I
Yeah,
keep going?
yeah. Yes, how you doing, James? Thank you for your hard work and sacrifice.
Yes, sir.
Uh, it doesn't go unnoticed. We really appreciate your fight, and even though we're not as big out here, and you might not even know us, but we're with you, and we do appreciate your fight. Uh, the other thing that, as I hear you explain your passion and your fight, it reminds me a lot of the crash of 2008 on the in the real estate industry.
Yeah.
Remember, where so many people lost their homes, and I remember going through a real estate class before the crash, and then I went back after the crash and took classes and passed my test. But what I did notice was the ethical book had changed. If I was to guess, it went from maybe 100 pages to like 400 or 500 pages, just about disclosure, transparency, and accountability. It was about ethics, right? Because a lot of this uh, realtors, they lied, right? And they didn't disclose the loans, and there was a lot of balloon payments on there where it was to a point where they couldn't afford it no more. So many people lost their homes and their investment. So have you ever related the trucking industry to the real estate market? Because it seems very, very similar as I continue to hear you. Did we lose them?
Yeah, we lost. James dropped out for some reason.
I'll wait to see if he
Yeah,
comes
he
back
might have
on.
got a phone call. He might have got a
Okay,
phone call. Who
I,
knows?
I'll
But
I'll wait.
one,
Because I wanted to finish this question. Just because he might not be thinking about it, but it's very relatable. Why? Because on the real estate side, man, they went after them and they made them accountable. And in fact, I believe they have a cap on their profits. So I wanted to throw this at him because if he hasn't compared the industries and how they changed after that recession, maybe it's a good idea to let him investigate to see how he can uh, compare them and maybe get some power from that, because the government didn't force them, cap them, and made them accountable. And that's something that in the trucking industry haven't seen. They've been over regulating us, but they haven't been even keeping the other groups accountable and ethical. So that's why it's important to me to hear from him.
right. And one other thing that I wanted to bring up is, you know, everything that, and I wish James was in here, but everything that Duffy and Bars has been doing, I really see it as a smoking mirror, a smoke screen, just like it has been for the last, what, 40 years, if not longer. It's actually been longer. But my whole point is, with what we're doing right now, it's making them do that, and we got to keep the pressure up and get the public involved, just like they've been getting involved. Exactly why they're doing these smoke screens again. All right, we keep the pressure up and force the accountability on them. That's exactly why you see transparency, accountability, education on this live. we are going to be the ones to push. All of us working together are going to be pushing transparency, accountability, to get change in this industry. And with what me, Ignacio, and Mike are building together, along with a few others that's not on this live, that's what we're going to show. Actions speak louder than words. That's what I was trying to tell James. He does the action, right? Billy Randall does the action. Exactly why I support him. And that's exactly what we're going to show and push for and bring everybody to the table. It's going to be coming out very soon. I'm working on the final details right now, and it's going to be announced here soon.
Oh, I got something to say towards the smoke and mirrors thing.
Go ahead.
You know, that's just part of government. They push something out, balls to the wall for a week or a couple weeks, and then it kind of goes off into the background because they came out with something else. Well, people need to understand that just because it's not being talked about right now, there's still stuff happening. There's still people pushing
Mm-hmm.
forward for the stuff that's going on. I mean, you had Connor's Law. Well, that got left in the background, and then all of a sudden Delilah's Law came out. Well, what happened to that after the truck show? Okay, you know, the trailer showed up. There was a lot of stuff going on, and people were talking about it. Well, then it got pushed under the back in the background, and then there was, you know, this popped up and that popped up, and the non-domicile thing and the non-speaking English. You know, they were hard and heavy on it. And it got pushed to the side. They do that trying to get people to forget, because they think they got something that's more important. But everybody needs to understand that just because it's not in the headlines doesn't mean that people have given up on it all. There's stuff that's going to get done. Things are going to happen. And
There's a lot happening in the background that people don't see.
Yes.
And all of us are actually part of it. And we know what's going on. Exactly why I keep putting out the videos. And I'm trying to, work on getting more videos out. It's just a lot. It's a lot of work, especially with what we're all trying to build right now. And anyways, like I said, it's going to be announced here very soon. But Steven Snyder has a comment over on Facebook. Trucker Steve CDL instructor and broken CDL trucking system on YouTube fighting for CDL student rights. How the FMCSA must be held accountable for their actions. And I totally agree with it. Exactly what I said, right? We're all pushing for accountability. Make government accountable for what they helped create, because it wasn't just government that created it.
Well, they really ain't schools anymore teaching people how to drive a truck and get their CDL. They're basically they're basically a puppy mill.
Mm-hmm.
Push them in, push them out, push them in, push them out. That's as fast as we can get her done. We want to make that.
And we're coming up with ideas on how to fix that as well. We've already been working on it. A group of us.
You know, there's still some good trucking schools out there, but trucking schools are like truck drivers, the police, everything else. The bad ones make everybody else look bad, even though there's a lot of good out there in every industry. There's a lot of good people. It's the bad ones that make everybody look like crap.
Yep. And one thing that I will add, it's all been created that way by design. But it doesn't look like James is going to be able to join us again, and we're already a little bit over time. So we're going to close out. Everybody have a good night. Be safe out there, and always, always safety first. You guys enjoy your families. Be safe. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night, guys. Nice seeing you guys.
Appreciate everybody that was on here watching and listening, and keep coming back every week for more.
Yeah, we're on every Saturday, 4 o'clock Pacific time, 5 o'clock Mountain Standard, 6 Central, and 7 o'clock Eastern. And we will have James Lamb on again here soon. Hopefully I could get Pink Cheetah to where she's not busy and get her in here and talk about her whole broker transparency that she got enforced with from FMCSA with TQL. But everyone have a good night and be safe.
Thank you. Good night.